A man wrote a letter to one of the great scholars of Islam, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he asked him, what do the scholars of Islam have to say about a person who is immersed in a sin? The more they try to get out of it, the more deeply they become involved in it. And they know that it is going to destroy their dunya and their hereafter if they continue to do so. And then he wrote, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on a person who guides his brother. Verily Allah is in the service of his slave as long as that slave is in the service of his brother.
AlMaghrib Institute presents Q&A with Ammar Alshukry.
This man was asking about a sin that he could not get out of. And that is something that we all can relate to. Something that he was tested with, something that he feared its repercussions on the Day of Judgment. So, a person has to know the importance of sin. A person has to recognize the severity of sin. If you don't know the qualities of a disease, you're not going to be that concerned about avoiding it. So if a person knows the qualities of diabetes and then they fear it and then they try to control their blood sugar levels, they try to work out, they try to lose weight. If a person knows the harm of cancer, then they'll quit smoking, or they'll try to protect themselves when they know the devastating effects of a disease. Well, spiritual diseases are even more severe in their consequences, and our sins are even more severe in their consequences. But unless a person knows the harm of sin, the effects of sin, what the repercussions of sins are, then they're not going to be that excited. They're not going to be that invested in removing themselves from it. And so what Ibn al-Qayyim does is he breaks up his book into a number of different chapters. And the first one, or a number of different parts rather, the first part, he talks about the importance of hope. Because the Prophet ﷺ says, and this is the first hadith that he actually mentions in his response, and it's one that I want to share with you. He says, Allah did not bring down an ailment except that he brought down the cure. Those who know it, and those who don't know it, don't know it. And what this hadith inspires in us is hope. That no matter what a person's ailment is, whether it's a physical ailment and an illness, or a spiritual ailment or a spiritual illness, that there is a cure for it. Just like there is a cure for every cancer, there is a cure for every vice. There is a cure for every disease that is physical. There is a cure for lust and greed and pride and arrogance. And there is a cure for passion. There is a cure for anything that a person is suffering from of vice or sin. Number two, Ibn al-Qayyim then begins talking about one of the greatest cures, which is prayer and dua. And dua is a weapon that we have been given. It is a tool that we have been given that many people don't really spend a lot of time on accessing. Every single time you raise your hands to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are transforming that issue from your limited power to the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from your ability to the ability of Allah. Number three, Ibn al-Qayyim then spends a long time talking about the ramifications of sins and the effects of sins, because without knowing the effects of sins, we're not going to be inclined to avoid them. And so everything from it prohibiting knowledge from us, to actually shortening our physical lifespans, to preventing us from rizq, to preventing us from guidance, to so many other harms of sins that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala mentions. And then there's a wonderful discussion about the types of sins. This book is filled with knowledge and incredible discussions and tangents. And of the things that he mentions are the types of sins, from the greatest of sins, from shirk to fornication and adultery, to the drinking of alcohol, to killing and oppression. And then he talks about love. And it was said that this person's question was actually a question that was inspired by a haram love that he had. And it was even said that it was a heterosexual love, and scholars even held that it was a homosexual love. And Ibn al-Qayyim addresses that to this person and concludes by talking about the greatest love, which every other love should be subservient to, and that is the love of Allah. And Ibn al-Qayyim responded with a book. He wrote a book that he called Al-Jawab al-Kafi liman sa'ala 'an ad-dawa' al-shafi, the complete response to the one who asks about the healing remedy, or as is famously known, ad-da' wad-dawa', the healing and the cure. And so this book was a response to this person's question. And it is a famous book, and it is one that we are basing our seminar on, The Venom and the Serum, a study of sin, guiding you from virtue to vice.